The Justice Department has sought to clarify some reports regarding the National Prosecuting Authority's donor funding protocols. In a statement, the ministry says they've been established at least to regulate non-cash donations, which would include skills and expertise. The DA's Justice Portfolio Committee member, Werner Horn, joins us tonight. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. Let's start, now that there's been this degree of confusion about what exactly was said in response to you by the ministry. What was your question and what was the reply?
Well, the question inquired as to the final protocol for the NPA accepting donations, private donations, in specifically dealing with state capture-related prosecutions. So that's a protocol that has been mooted since Herman Cronje, the then head of the Special Investigative Unit of the NPA, in August 2019 said that that would be the only way in which this unit could deal effectively with state capture prosecutions. The minister promised the protocol for June last year, and now he says they're in the final stages of setting it up. You say there's been clarification. Unfortunately, from where we're sitting, there's still no clarity, in the sense that the minister refers in his answer to me to the National Treasury protocols, which, as a matter of fact, do make provision for also cash donations. The in-kind donations has never been really an issue, because it deals with training and capacitization of specifically prosecutors who will be dealing with more complex cases.
Mm-hmm. And when I said there'd been clarity, I'd just like to read for you and our viewers what is said, in fact, in the statement. It says here, the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services wishes to correct recent media reports on the funding of the National Prosecuting Authority, particularly in respect to donations. It says, in response to a parliamentary question posed by Honourable Werner Horn, MP, on the status of donations in kind to the NPA, the ministry clarified that a new protocol has been established to regulate non-cash donations in kind, including, as I was saying, skills and expertise. It then says, in respect of financial donations, those are channeled through a general RDP fund, which is money that sits with National Treasury. Now, explain for the ordinary South African who is taking all of that in tonight why that is an important distinction to make.
Well, yeah, as I said, firstly, the possibility for in-kind donations is twofold. If one talks about the prosecution of complex cases and the lack of critical skills within the NPA, the first is training, and quite obviously that should not be an issue. The second, of course, is experts who offer their own time and their expertise for both investigation and prosecution of these complex cases. Now, you would recall that when these first volumes of the state capture report was first released and this SIU was set up, there was a lot of private experts, former judges, forensic experts, auditors, who said, but we're willing to contribute. And then the response at the time was, but we don't have a protocol in place to properly regulate this. So hopefully that energy and that drive to assist South Africa in cleaning up would still be there, and now hopefully all of those experts can be involved. From where we're sitting, as I said, it's just sad that it's taken more than 3 years to basically just confirm that the National Treasury guidelines that applies to all departments, or has been applied to all departments up to now, would more or less, without much of a difference, be applied to the NPA as well. And one has to wonder why that has taken so long to settle on this.
Why,
in respect of cash donations,
just on the cash donations, I'm glad you were going in that direction. Is having the money that comes in from private donations, putting it in a kitty basically managed by National Treasury, does that create a big enough distance between the NPA and possible influence by the donor?
Well, one would hope so. Look, that's the one small difference I've picked up in studying the National Treasury guidelines. Ordinarily, one would be able to donate in respect of other departments for what is called a special purpose or a special project. And in the case of the NPA, one would worry if the case is that somebody can come and say, we're willing to pay for the prosecution of Joe Soap, who has been mentioned in the state capture report, because that would seriously erode and undermine potentially the independence of the NPA. So to put it all in a kitty and accept it without conditions in a ring-fence fund within National Treasury, hopefully would create that distance. Of course, there will always be those who will be looking for more capture. But in that sense, we're very much convinced that ultimately what must also happen is that individuals in the NPA must not come into contact with those donors, and individuals within the NPA who deal with these complex cases must not necessarily know what the source of the funds is. So in that sense, let's say an omelette of donor funds rather than specific donors being identified and linked to specific cases would be the answer. Of course, the other part of the solution is accountability, transparency, and at least an annual, if not quarterly, publication of whoever contributed to this fund in order to really have South Africans rest assured that this money would not lead to another round of capture.
The EFF has also put out a statement on this issue, and it says that, as what has been stated in the reply by the Justice Ministry, what we're dealing with basically here is the surrender of a critical entity to the hands of capital and should be opposed. Do you agree?
No, we don't agree with that. As I say, there can be sufficient safety measures to prevent specific donors having influence on the way prosecutions are being dealt with, and investigations are unfolding. The independence of the NPA in steering both investigations and prosecutions can be protected. And as a matter of fact, it has been clear since at least, as I said, August 2019, that the ability of the fiscus to properly fund the NPA and specifically the SIU to deal with the massive amount of potential prosecutions following from the state capture report will in our current circumstances just never be there. So there's simply no way in that sense where we can then say to capitalists who obviously also have at heart, or their interest is to ultimately ensure that their capital is protected through proper governance and clean governance and the rooting out of corruption and state capture, that their funds is not well.
Why can't we ever have a system? No, well, let me take back the word ever. Why can't we have an NPA, that is able to run purely on government funding instead of the complication now of adding a layer of these funds which require scrutiny and special protocols precisely because they come from people whose intentions are questioned rightfully in some instances?
Yeah, I think we could have such a prosecution authority. It would be possible to have it, but what our immediate history shows us is that in the years after 2009, like with all other state entities and departments, they were not singled out. There has been a consistent reduction in the baseline allocation to the NPA, so that has had a real effect on the financial ability of the NPA to run effectively on only state-allocated funds. But the second part of that answer is for the NPA to become also functionally independent. At the moment, it is a sub-boat within the Department of Justice. So apart from being at the mercy of Treasury, it's also to an extent at the mercy of the Department of Justice when it comes to budgetary allocations. And in the final instance, what you asked for will only be achieved if we settle after a proper investigation as a country, on a fixed percentage of our national budget, which is to be allocated to the NPA on an annual basis. So that would remove any uncertainty and also isolate really the NPA as a key and critical player in our criminal justice system from suffering when budget cuts is enforced.
Right. Werner Horn, I called you Horner earlier. Apologies. Thank you so much for your time tonight.